Hello, welcome to this week's edition of the Turning Points podcast. We had the privilege of talking to Lissa Coffey, who I actually knew, who you didn't know I knew because I followed her newsletter, Coffee Talk and What's Your Dosha for years. That was kind of one of the earlier things I got involved with. And man, I love her style. She's a why not, no obstacles, take kind of life by the life by the horns, the bull by the horns, and just say go. I like it. Yeah, just flow, creativity, go in the flow. No, there's nothing you can't do. So I've known Lissa. She's another Chopra connection. She's also a Chopra meditation teacher. So I know her from the Chopra Center over 20 years ago. And the book that I knew of was she wrote What's Your Dosha Baby, which she just got the publishing back to, and she'll be republishing that. And she told us about all kinds of other things she's into now. And so, yeah, enjoy the conversation with Lissa Coffey. We sure did. Hey, Lissa.
Hey, Corinne. Hi, Sean. So great to see you guys.
Oh, my gosh. I haven't seen you in it's been way too long.
I know, way too long. We have so much in common. We have history, probably 20 years or something.
20 years of history. It's been so amazing. I've had a lot of old Chopra, both of our amigos on the podcast. It's been so fun to reconnect. We had Roger on.
Oh, I love Roger. Roger was my teacher who taught me to be a meditation teacher.
Yes, and me too.
Yeah, he's awesome.
So thank you so much for being here, and it's so lovely to see you. So we're going to jump in with this question. So many seekers can recall that point in time when they started to question their so-called beliefs or conditionings. Do you remember when you became a seeker?
So I was thinking about this, and I was just always this really weird little kid. I mean, I can't remember a time when I wasn't a seeker or a seer or something. I mean, going back to when I was little, I had these imaginary friends, and I honestly thought everybody else could see them too. I didn't know they couldn't, but I had them, and my mom always thought, okay, whatever. And she was always telling me, you're in your own little world. And I was like, what? What are you talking about, So I always had that going on. And then I remember in 5th grade, I asked for tarot cards for my birthday. And my mom's like, what's that? And I said, I don't know, but I want them. I just want them. And then I used to take I was always the odd man out, very awkward, and I never really fit in anywhere. But I had these weird things that I liked, and I would take I heard about this somewhere. I don't know where I heard about it, or maybe I just downloaded it. I don't know what it was, I would take all the girls into the girls' bathroom, and you may have seen this, one person lays down, and the other person kind of kneels down, and you put your fingers like this. And you go light as a feather, stiff as a board, light as a feather. So you go all around the circle. And then everybody stands up and you lift the person up so easy. And all the kids were like, wow, that was whoa. And I thought, oh, okay, well, this is pretty cool. Something I can do, nobody else can do, So I don't know. It was always things like that.
I wonder where you got that from, because there was no Google back then or YouTube.
I think maybe through meditation or something. I don't know. It just
came to you.
Yeah, I think it just came to me. I have no idea. I can't remember. I remember weird things too, like when I was 2 was when Kennedy was shot. And I remember exactly where I was and what was happening and what was said. And a 2-year-old doesn't really know how to talk, right? But I remember the whole thing playing through my mind. I was in the seat of the grocery cart, and my mom was in there, and I heard the people over the speaker, and all that kind of stuff happened. And then I remember also when I know I was a brownie, so that's 2nd or 3rd grade, right? So I was at brownie camp, and I used to get allergy shots every Monday. I was allergic to everything. I mean, everything. I'm like this alien being on the earth, allergic to everything. And I had to get these allergy shots. And when I was in Brownie Camp, we had this one day where we all went down the hill, like this dried hay hill of dried dead weeds, right, on cardboard. And we thought, oh, have fun. Let's just go down the hill. And we did it over and over and over again, like all day, right? So I was exposed to all this hay, which I'm a little kid. I don't know what I'm allergic to or whatever. Evidently, I'm allergic to it. My mom drives me to the doctor, gets the allergy shot. She goes over to her friend's house, says, kids, wait in the car. She's going to go talk to her friend. I start having what I didn't know at the time, but like an allergic reaction. And I like pass out. My sister thought I was dead. I remember being like itchy all over the place. Like, couldn't crawl out of my skin. I must have passed out or something. My sister thought I was dead. My younger sister, she goes running to the house. Mom, Lisa's dead. My mom's like, what? And she sees me and she panics. And she drives me back to the doctor. And I remember it wasn't like a near-death experience, but it was definitely an out-of-body experience because I could see the nurse like picking me up, but I could also see from a distance the nurse carrying me. You know what I mean? So that was like a weird thing. So things like that just happened to me all the time. I think it was more like I had to get more mainstream when I was in high school rather than, get disillusioned and seek more spirits. So just to be more, fit in better.
Did you struggle fitting in, or were you bullied, or did people recognize you that, or did you have a sense that you were an odd man out?
I was bullied a little bit for being so awkward and everything. I was just like an easy target.
Yeah.
But I always knew that I was fine, that I had it right, that they messed up or something. They didn't get it, so it wasn't that much of a issue for me, like, I was bullied and I was a victim. I didn't really see it as that. I thought, like, why are they being so stupid? That kind of thing.
But you thought that everybody else, or you experienced that everybody else was missing something, but you had more of the pieces, kind of a thing.
Yeah. Kind of like, I don't know why they don't get it, because I thought everybody saw the world the way I did, but I guess they didn't. But yeah, it was interesting. Whole time.
Was there resistance from your family about it? Were your family pretty supportive? Were they, did they kind of try to push you away for things, or was it pretty much accepted at that point?
Well, I grew up with a single mom. So she was busy working and raising 3 little kids, and she had her hands full. She didn't care what the heck I did, She just always knew I was strange and just accepted it and whatever, she didn't pay much attention to me when I was growing up. The other 2 were younger, so I was kind of taking care of them almost, And my dad, I don't know where he wasn't really very hands-on with us kids at all. So, I learned early on, though, that if I want to get something done, I do it myself. Like, if I want to be in a play and I want the lead, then I better write the play and write that part for myself,
Gotcha.
So I did that, like, starting in, I think it was 7th grade. In theater class, we had all these plays to choose from, and we had to pick one, and they were all really ridiculous, and nobody was happy about it. And I said, well, this one I think is good, but I need to rewrite it and turn it into a musical. And the teacher looked at me like, what? And I said, I can do it. She's like, okay, try. And so I did, and then she's like, okay. And then I got cast in the lead, of course. so I thought, okay, this is how you do it. And I think that was a good lesson for me to learn, because that's kind of how my whole life has been. You know, why wait around for somebody to give you permission to do something? Just do it yourself, and then it gets done the way you want it to. So that's kind of my mode these days.
That's beautiful. So what was the next step after that? Like, did you go to college, and how did that affect, I was very similar to you, and I want to come back to that 2-year-old memory at some point, but I want to get more of a gist of your story first. So do you feel like you were really sensitive, like in the heart or with feelings? Yeah.
Oh, totally. Like, I could read people, like such an empath, you know, and if someone was suffering, I would get drained of energy, and I'd hit the wall down the next day. And to this day, I don't know how to really control it. You know, the energy just pours out of me. I can't help it. But, so I went to UCLA, and the idea was I was going to be in the motion picture television department and be a producer or something like that. You know, I loved TV. Like, when I was my senior year, I spent at this, they called it ROP, Regional Occupation Program, where I had a radio show and I had like a TV. This was back in 79. So you can imagine it's so old school compared to what we have now with everything electronic and digital and blah, blah, blah. But I'm just like, okay, this is going to be my career. I used to watch Mary Tyler Moore, and I'm like, that's the job I want. I want to be in the newsroom. I want to be, you know, like Mary and produce the news. And I want to be on the air too. And I want to do, you know, that was like my thing. But at UCLA, that was a very, very competitive department. I could take all of the classes, but when it came time to declaring a major, I applied, but I didn't get in. They only accept like very small percentage. And I'm like, gosh, what's going on? I didn't get in. What am I going to do now? You know, so I went to the college counselor and said, I'm on a track to graduate in 3 years. I mean, it was, you know, 4 years is college, but I was taking summer school and everything so I could get out of there in 3 years, because I was like, college is a waste of time. I want to work. I want to be in the world, you know? So I'm like, what do I major in so that I don't lose these credits so that I can still get out of here? And she said, okay, well, you have a choice between sociology and poli-sci. And I'm like, whatever, what is the difference? And she said, here's your course catalog, take a look at the courses. So I'm looking at the courses and I'm going sociology, Tuesday, Thursday, hour and 15 minutes. Poli-sci, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 2 hours. I said, I'm a sociology major. That's how I picked my major. It's ridiculous. But then right away, I went to work for ABC Television. I was a page at ABC. That was like fun. That was so fun because I got to work all the shows and see all the behind the scenes and meet all the stars. I went to the Oscars. I went to the Emmys, went to the People's Choice Awards. I mean, like you name it, American Music Awards. I got to do all that stuff, which was all kind of like, you know, bucket list stuff in my mind. Like, I want to do this even when I was little. Like, I remember when I was 3 years old, I used to dance in front of the TV to American Bandstand. My mom even has a picture of me doing this with my grandmother. And I used to tell her, I'm going to be on that show. I'm going to be on that show. Well, guess what? In college, I was on American Bandstand for like a year. I was one of the dancers.
That's awesome.
I like manifested all this stuff without even knowing what I was doing, you know? But then I kind of got, when I graduated, I needed a full-time job. I couldn't just do the page part-time thing. I needed a full-time regular job to pay the bills, you know, pay for my apartment, all that. So I took the first job that came along, which was as a secretary in the entertainment division. And I didn't realize that, back in the early 80s, that was a glass ceiling, because if you were labeled as a secretary, you were always a secretary. They were not going to move you up. They were not even going to consider you, So to me, that was very frustrating. So I went to work for a magazine, and I really wanted to be a writer, but they only had a sales job open. So I said, I could do sales. They go, what experience have you had? I said, well, I sold yearbook ads in high school. I had no sales experience, but I was so convincing. Yes, I can do this, that I got hired. Of course, I was a terrible salesperson, because somebody says no, and I'm like, that's okay. And they're like, no, you have to have that killer instinct. You can't take no for an answer. I'm like, why? They can't afford it. I'm not going to make them. Like, no, that's not how you're a salesman. So then I went and did some, by that time I was married, so I could go back to part-time stuff. And I was teaching modeling school and teaching acting and going on auditions and all kinds of stuff. And eventually just got pregnant, and I was so sick being pregnant from morning sickness, like constantly, that I just couldn't do anything. I had to quit all my jobs and just sit around the house, right? So this was like another great opportunity for me, because there was a place called the Healing Arts Center, and I would go visit there, and I was like, this is like the coolest thing that they have, this Healing Arts Center. And so I was able to take classes when I was pregnant in hands-on healing, like now they call it Reiki, but it was hands-on healing. We did color therapy, aromatherapy, the tarot, the background of the tarot, feng shui. This was like way before feng shui was a thing. Palm reading. You name it, all these different cool spiritual things, and I just loved it. But what was good for me is I had a community then of like-minded people who kind of like got me, right? They were all older than me. I was like the young one. These were all like middle-aged women. And I was like not even 30, and I was hanging out with them. I loved it anyway. And so then when my kids were born, the owner of that place, Louise Taylor, who was my teacher and taught me like, oh my gosh, she taught me so much stuff. I got like really in depth, like being her apprentice kind of thing. I learned everything, crystals, and you name it, everything. So we decided we were going to write a book called The Healthy Family Handbook, because my little kids were sick with little kid stuff, and I didn't want to give them like medicine all the time. I said, what can I do? And so I'd do the research, and she'd help me, and we kind of come up with stuff, and it worked. It worked, right? So then all my friends were asking me, what do you do? What do you do? And I'm like, this is what you do. And then I got tired of saying the same thing over and over again. I said, I'm just going to write it down in a book. And Louise said, well, I have a publisher, because she had done a couple of books before. Let's put it together and get it published. So that's what we did. And that was my first book that came out. I co-authored with her, which was great, because I learned the whole process of writing a book. And I kind of, getting your first book published is a big deal. After that, then you've got a track record that you can build on and get other publishers and stuff. So that was like really cool. And what that opened up doors for me is one of the modalities that I researched was Ayurveda. And that's how I found Deepak, because I was trying to figure out, well, who knows about Ayurveda around here? And Louise says, well, Deepak Chopra. And I'm like, wow, okay, I'm going there. So I just went down to, he was in La Jolla at that time. And I think the first class that he had that I discovered Ayurveda, I just signed up for that. It was Synchronistically. I'm like, I'm doing this. And just showed up and showed him the book and told him I'm writing another one and I'm doing this. He was so supportive and gracious. And that class was amazing because his parents were there, and I got to sit next to his mom, and I made friends with his mom. And I remember talking to her saying, how did you get two such great men as your sons? What did you do to raise them? Because I had two little boys at that point too, and I would love if they grew up to be like her two guys, And she said, oh, it was all God. It was all God. She wouldn't take any of the credit. And I'm like, that's really amazing. But from Deepak, then I learned about Vedanta, and then that opened up way more doors for me, So I ended up I wrote What's Your Dosha Baby, which is the only book that's ever been written about Ayurveda and relationships. And that was published in 2004. And starting in about 2014, I started trying to get the rights back from the publisher because it was doing pretty good, and they're making all the money, because they have all the rights. So finally, just this last month, I got the rights back. Wow. So now I'm going to republish it and update it and put it on my label, my, imprint. Label, like music. I had this other foray into music. I don't know if you even know that, Corinne.
I
have my own record label. Oh my gosh. I've had like so many lifetimes in this one lifetime. I totally believe in past lives, but I also believe you can live a lot of lives in your one lifetime. And I certainly have. So about the time when my kids were born, we were listening to, it was tapes, audio tapes, that cassette tapes at that time, right? And they had, Disney had its kids radio station, and they wanted to listen to music. And I was like, oh my gosh, this E-I-E-I-O is going to drive me crazy. This is like the tackiest music. I can't stand it. It's driving me up the wall. And then you turn on regular radio and it's Madonna going, like a virgin. And my kids are, what's a virgin? And I'm like, oh my God, they're way too young for this. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to write some songs for kids that are pop music. So they're great melodies that the parents will like with good words that the kids will like. And I thought, well, have I ever written a song before? Oh, yes, I did. When I was in the fourth grade or fifth grade, they had a songwriting contest, and I wrote a song, and I only got honorable mention. But you know what? It encouraged me. I know what I'm doing. You know what I mean? I can write a song. I know what I'm doing. So I ended up writing like 5 albums worth of songs. I got these singers that were so good and, professionals, and they were like, their day job was at Universal Studios. They have the Beetlejuice show, and they have like the werewolf and the vampire or whatever it is. They were like those guys singing and dancing and doing productions. And I took them and they sang my songs in the studio. I had a co-writer who actually had a studio on the Warner Brothers lot. So I would go on the Warner Brothers lot, but we're in the trailer in the back, we're not with the execs or anything, but we felt like big wigs. We got to eat in the commissary and stuff like that. And we're recording our album, and it did really great. And then I got a job at, KDTV. So this was my Mary Tyler Moore moment where I got to do the news and be on camera. And now, since I had a kids book out and a parenting book out, I was like the parenting expert. So my segment was called Positive Parenting. And I would interview various experts like psychologists or whatever and talk about sibling rivalry or how to make your house childproof or whatever it is, the parenting segment. So once a week, I'd go on camera and do this. Well, it was a very small network station up in Oxnard. It wasn't an LA audience. It was Ventura County and up by Santa Barbara. So they couldn't pay me. So they said, well, if we could pay you, we'd pay you $150 a week for your segment. I said, well, that sounds great. How about if instead of that, since you can't, give me cash anyway, give me production time. And they go, oh, that's interesting. And I said, yeah, because I want to use your camera. I want to use your studio. I want to use your guy, whatever. And they're like, cool, do it. So I used that to produce music videos of the songs that I wrote. So we did these music videos. We did about a dozen of them. And then I sent them to Nickelodeon, the Learning Channel, and what was the other one? Discovery Kids. So they had all these different new cable outlets for kids. And I sent them to them, and they aired them. They put them on as interstitials between the kids' programs. So it was fabulous. So now I got to be a producer, right? And I applied to be in, they used to have a different guild for the producers of film and the producers of TV, just like they used to have a different guild for film actors and TV actors, right? So I applied for the television one, got in as a producer for television. When they merged, it became the Producers Guild. Now I'm in the Producers Guild. I'm in the Screen Actors Guild. So like all my bucket list stuff, my music has been played on the radio. I mean, yeah, my kids' music was played on, Disney Channel on the radio. But like all those bucket lists, I went to the Oscars, all those things. It's like, wow, I'm accomplishing all this stuff, but, it's on a different scale, but the universe doesn't know the difference. Yeah. You know what I mean? The universe is going to fulfill your wish, and the universe doesn't know if you're wishing big or wishing little. It doesn't matter. It's going to happen. So that's how my wishes kind of got fulfilled. So then, yeah.
I mean, through all these stories, do you ever consider that there's obstacles in your way, or do you just kind of say, why not, and then go? I mean,
exactly. If you think about the obstacles, you'll never even start, In fact, one of the books that I wrote is The 4 Pearls and the 4 Squirrels. And there's 4 life lessons. I built this around, I loved Don Miguel Ruiz, The 4 Agreements, right? But those 4 agreements are so simple. But they're so profound, and if people just followed them, their lives could change. And I thought, well, what are the life lessons that I learned that are very simple that people could put to use that I could make a 4 agreements kind of thing about. So I wrote the 4 pearls and the 4 squirrels, and it's pearls of wisdom, and the squirrels are like the distractions that take your attention away from that, right? So it's look at what you have, not at what you don't have. Look at what you are doing, not what anyone else is doing. Look at the opportunities, not the obstacles. And look at what matters, not at what doesn't matter. So those 4 things have always been my driving force. So, I mean, if I looked at, any of the obstacles, I would be like overwhelmed. I just think, okay, one step at a time. I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to do, and then I'll get there eventually.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that is a wonderful, that sounds like the common theme for all your, each point of the stories that you're talking about. And, it's funny because that's something that, I think we've seen over and over. We are our own worst obstacles. We are definitely, we did a little live segment about, our thoughts controlling us and our how we believe our thoughts. And if you don't give them attention and you just focus on those 4 things like you talked about, it's you can do the things that the gravity is calling you to do, as long as you focus on doing that.
Absolutely. I have always thought that we wouldn't have that thought that I want to do something, or I need to do this, or this is my idea, if we weren't fully 100% capable of fulfilling it. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't want to be an NBA basketball player. I have no desire to do that.
Yeah.
Well, good thing, because I really am not capable of doing that, right?
Yeah.
but I am capable of, putting together this stuff. And so I'm just like doing it.
Okay,
Yeah.
so because this is kind of my interest, where my interest lies, I want to know where the Vedanta and where the meditation came in and where that's at now and what that has to do with everything.
Okay, so this is really cool because when my kids were growing up, I think I was so focused on them and then my record label and stuff like that, I kind of got a little bit away from the spiritual stuff, a little bit. And one day my younger son said to me, Mom, why don't we go to church? And I looked at him, I'm like, how do you know about church? He's like 5. I'm like, how do you know about church? He goes, I don't know, but I want to go to church. And I thought, that's kind of how I was when I was little. My family never went to church, but I was like going with my friend's family, and they're like, we don't want to go to church. I'm like, I'll go with you. I was like hopping in their car just so I could go to their church, So I thought, okay. So I thought, okay, I'm going to find a church that really fits in with my vibe. So I found what's now called the Center for Spiritual Living, but it used to be called the Church of Religious Science. And I found that and I loved it. I thought this is like so cool. And I got super involved and I was like, on the committees and I painted a mural and I don't do anything part way. I'm like all in. So I really got involved and I was taking classes and all that kind of stuff. And at one point through their program, you can become like, you have a 100 series that you take, it takes a year. Then you have 200 series, it takes a year. Then you have the 300 series. If you complete the 300 series, you can become a practitioner. And then if you go the 400 series, you can become a minister. So I got as far as the 300 series, and I felt like I was at a crossroads because I thought, well, I like this, but there's something missing. What I really love is going down to Deepak's thing. By that time, I had taken every class he had ever taught, right? And I was already on the path to becoming a meditation teacher. And so I thought, what am I going to do here? Should I go the practitioner route or should I go the Vedanta route? And it occurred to me that there's so many practitioners in our area from our church, but there were really no meditation teachers or Vedanta practitioners in our area. So I thought, I think I'm going to do that, because that's where my heart is. So I'm going to do that. So then I kind of eased off the Center for Spiritual Living stuff and dived deep into the Vedanta. And mostly I was doing self-study at that time because I didn't know where the Vedanta centers were or what. And I really didn't have time to drive far to find them. So I did mostly self-study, which was cool. But then at a certain point, I think the kids were in college and I had the time and I started doing the research and I found the Vedanta Society and I found my teacher. I found out he was speaking in Santa Barbara and it was my birthday or something. And I told Greg, my husband, I want to go to the Vedanta Society in Santa Barbara for my birthday. He's like, yeah, that sounds like you. Okay, well, let's go. So we went up there and, I was looking around, I'm like, this place is so beautiful and I feel so at home and I'm just so comfortable and at peace and I know I'm in the right place. And I saw the Swami, who's now my Swami, come walking up and I looked at him and I'm like, this is love at first sight. You know what I mean? It's like, he's the guy. And I just said, Swami, I've been looking for you. And he said, well, here I am. You found me. And I said, I want to join the Vedanta Society. And he goes, great, give me your email. I'll put you on the email list. And here's my thing. And do you know about the Bhagavad-Gita? And I'm like, yes, I love the Bhagavad-Gita. He said, well, I'm teaching a class in it. And it's every Tuesday. So I'm like, okay, that's what I'm doing. So then I started like every Tuesday, the first Tuesday I went, this was like another like life-changing moment for me because I go to the Vedanta Society. I love it. This is the one in Hollywood. I don't know if you've been there, Corinne. Have you been there?
Yep.
It's so pretty, but it used to be a house, you know, and it's got these gardens and a beautiful temple. So it's very like humble, you know, it's quaint. It's not ostentatious at all. Like some Hindu temples you go to and it's like marble and gold and all this. This is really kind of like down home, comfortable. So I went to the 4:30 Bhagavad-Gita class, and it's from 4:30 to 5:30. And then Swami says to me, oh, we always have tea from 5:30 to 6. Do you want to stay for tea? And I'm like, yeah. So we had tea, and I'm like, this is so lovely. And everybody's having snacks, and everybody's just getting to know each other and, you know, talking Vedanta. Then at 6 o'clock, he says, oh, now's when we have Arati. Do you want to stay for Arati? I didn't even know what it was. I'm like, yeah. So that was from 6 to 7. And we just go in the temple, and it's, you know, chanting and prayers and meditation for an hour. I loved it. Then somebody goes, do you want to stay for dinner? Dinner's from 7 to 7:30. I'm like, okay. So then they serve this big buffet meal for everybody. Everything's free. They never ask you for money. Everything's free. Dinner was great. And then they're like, oh, hurry up. We have to go. It's the other class. I'm like, what other class? They go 7:30 to 8:30. We have our last class. I'm like, okay. So I ended up staying. And then I said, okay, this is what I'm doing every Tuesday. So I did that every single Tuesday until lockdown when we couldn't go anymore, right? But after about the, you know, couple months of studying the Bhagavad-Gita, Swami kept saying to us, the best way to know the Gita is to know it by heart. So start memorizing these verses. So I thought, oh gosh, this is hard because they're in Sanskrit and then they're translated. And then even the translations, because, you know, it's translated by somebody who speaks Sanskrit, you know, are kind of awkward and they don't always, they're open to interpretation, right? So then you get in the Bhagavad-Gita, the interpretation after that, the commentary. So it's very cumbersome to try to learn it this way. So I thought, you know what? What if it was in English rhyming verse? Like the Sanskrit has a beat to it and it rhymes, you know, and it flows because it was originally written as a song. So Bhagavad-Gita means song of God. So people used to sing it, and then that's how they'd pass it down from generation to generation. So I thought, hey, I've written songs before. I'm going to turn the Bhagavad-Gita into a song. So I started doing it, like writing the poetry out, chapter by chapter by chapter. And I did it in secret because I thought, you know, who am I to be rewritten? This is a sacred text, 5,000 years old. You know, who am I to be messing up with the Bhagavad Gita? So I did it in secret. And then finally I got almost done and I thought, I'm going to show Swami and see if I'm on the right track and see if he approves. Because if he says, no, I'm not going to show anybody. I'm not going to do anything with it. So I showed it to him. He loved it. He loved it. He was like, oh, this is so important. And this is what Westerners need. And thank you for this. And how can I support you? So he was really good. So I said, okay, I'm going to just finish writing it. Then I'm going to make it a book. But it was always my intention in the back of my mind that I was going to make it a song. Mm. So I made it the book, and then I went to my friend, Vito. Do you know Vito Grigoli, Corinne?
I don't think so.
So he's David Vito Grigoli. He's a producer and songwriter, and he plays all these instruments. He can play the Saraswati one. I can't remember the name of it.
The
right
Veena
now.
or the Saraswati or the
all of them.
The Veena.
I mean, you name it. The tabla, the they knew the everything. He plays them all. He's like so good. And I met him because he played at my wedding to Greg 20 years ago. When I married Greg, he came with my friend who was doing the music, and he came. So I'm like, okay, Vito, this is what we're going to do. So for the past 3 years, this is what we've been doing is we've been setting the Bhagavad-Gita to music, chapter by chapter by chapter, chapter. We're on the very last song right now, and we're going to release it as an album.
So wow. Congratulations. That's huge.
I know. I'm so excited.
And more importantly than being huge, it is important, but what a spiritual practice for you.
Absolutely. When I was just me at my computer and looking at the Gita and thinking, how can I say this in a way that has rhythm and rhyme and makes sense and, feeds the heart? It was beautiful. It was beautiful. Some days I was so into it, I could only write 3 or 4 verses because it took a long time. Other times it just flowed and I could do a whole chapter in a day, It was really an interesting process. I'm telling you, the Gita is like the best. And when I think about all those different experiences in my life, from going to church, from writing songs to writing books to writing a play to, all these different things that I did as a kid, I feel like it's all led up to this. All of that was just practice for this, because this is like totally my dharma, my purpose, it's gotten me more excited than anything ever has. I love it. I absolutely love it.
Man, that is really fascinating. I still work in the music industry as recording engineering. So I've had experiences where, kind of in the reverse, where we've had an artist who did a song in English and then translated it for Spanish. And I've had conversations. This is tripping me out because exactly what you said about the language barrier, it's a different lens of grammar. And so he would have to rewrite not the message, but rewrite the way you would say something in Spanish. So there's this one song, En Fuego. And so I got it in English, of course, right away. But then when he translated in Spanish, I was like, so what are you saying? He's like, well, so... because of the Spanish culture, we would say it this way, but it's more like really understanding the culture and their passions and what moves them rhythmically, but then also, contextually. So that is what a fascinating, epiphany that you must have had of like, well, the beauty that is innate to this ancient culture isn't getting through because it's on the 1 or 2 dimensional page of just words that are really kind of blocky and not in the context of English. So, wow, that's amazing. That is amazing to think about.
Yeah, and you brought up a good point because I also had to contemporize it, to speak in a contemporary language that flows and we all understand. So I remember there's this one part that's kind of colloquial where Krishna's saying to Arjuna, I've known you many, many years and many lifetimes. I taught this guy years and years ago. And Krishna's like, but that guy lived hundreds of years ago and you weren't even born yet. And basically there's a part where it's like, do the math. It wouldn't say in the Gita, do the math, right? But in contemporary, we know, that means kind of get real, do the math, right? So I put that in there and it rhymed with something else and it's kind of catchy. So when it's in a pop song now, it's singable,
Wow.
I could see that as a musical.
Yeah. And, that was my original intention also is maybe do a musical out of it. But now because of COVID, Broadway's kind of shut down and everything.
Just right now.
But I thought like Jesus Christ Superstar. It'd be like Krishna Superstar, you know?
Exactly.
So maybe that'll happen at some points, you know, maybe that'll happen.
So, Lissa, do you mind sharing for everybody, because just, you know, like if you can do a simple definition of Vedanta and a synopsis of the Bhagavad-Gita, just for anybody who's listening who may not know those things.
Sure. So Vedanta teaches three main things. It teaches that we're all connected, right? That we're all intertwined on this earth, right? That's one thing it teaches. The second thing it teaches is that there's no death. We're all connected because we're all one, and that one thing doesn't die. We're on a continuum. And it teaches that, I hope I'm articulating this right, because usually it's like, oh, you know, it teaches that all paths lead to God. So that same I, that same God, that same, you know, everything, whether you speak English or you speak Spanish or you speak Danish or whatever you speak, and you have God, it's all the same God, and we're all going to the same path, just like it's a big mountain and you get to the top. It's the same thing at the top. Okay? So we're all made up of the same stuff. We're all related, connected, universal, and all paths lead to God. So that's what Vedanta says. And then with the Bhagavad-Gita it's an amazing story. And until I took this class with Swami, I didn't really understand the story. But I'm glad I took the class because it really explained it to me. So the Bhagavad Gita is a part of this bigger epic called the Mahabharata. And it's 18 volumes. And some people actually say that it's history, that all these things really happened. Just like in the Bible, you can go back and say, well, this happened, so maybe this is real. Maybe it's not just a story. Maybe it really happened. So there are like places in India where they say, well, this is where this happened. This is where this happened. So they treat it like history. So what happened was there were these two families. It's actually the same family, but it's two sets of cousins. And they were feuding over the kingdom. And basically there's a good guy side and a bad guy side, right? And the bad guy side would not share the kingdom, would not give them a piece of the kingdom, just wanted to take over and mess everybody up. The good guy side was like, we can't let this happen. You know, this isn't right. We have to go for justice and fairness and everything. So they tried everything not to make the war, but it happened anyway. So they're having this war. So the guy who's the good guy side is 5 brothers. So the third brother is Arjuna the Archer. So he's our hero of the Bhagavad Gita, and he's the general of his good guy side. And the night before the war is supposed to start, he goes out onto the battlefield and he's looking at the other side and he's like, oh my gosh, what did I get myself into? First of all, we are way outnumbered. They have so many more weapons than we do. They have so many more people than we do. And wait a second, these people, they're not my enemies. This is my teachers. These are my friends. This is my cousins. This is my aunts and uncles and people. How am I supposed to kill these people? What am I doing here? I don't want to do this war. I'm out. I think I should just go be a monk and take off. I'm out, you know. So he basically has this nervous breakdown on the middle of the battlefield. And it's his to be or not to be moment. And his chariot driver is his friend. He thinks this is just his buddy, Krishna. What he doesn't know is Krishna is God incarnate. And Krishna had said to him and his nemesis, his cousin who's on the other side, you know, one of you can have me by your side and one of you can have all my army. And the cousin said, well, I get to pick first. And Krishna says, no. Arjuna came first, so Arjuna's going to pick first. And Arjuna says, I only want you by my side. The cousin thinks he's crazy and says, great, because I wanted the army anyway. So that's how Arjuna wound up with Krishna by his side. He doesn't know he's God incarnate. But he says, Krishna, help me. What do? I am in such dilemma. So the whole Bhagavad-Gita is this conversation that takes place on a battlefield. And right before the war's supposed to start. And it's so profound because this is such a metaphor for our life, right? We don't live, this conversation could have taken place in a beautiful garden by a stream. It could have taken place in heaven on the clouds, but no, it's taken place on the battlefield. And that's because Arjuna represents each one of us. And we are living our life basically in a battlefield. We are out there fighting the good fight every single day, right? We have jobs and we have to pay bills and we have to deal with bosses and we have to pay taxes and we have to follow the rules of the land and vote and deal with our families and holiday dinners and, get married and get divorced and have kids and have them yell at you. And life is a battle, right? So all the advice that Krishna gives Arjuna is all the advice that God is giving us. So it tells us everything we need to know. The most important thing that Krishna teaches Arjuna is you need to know who you are. And the purpose of life, the one purpose that we have in this life, and this is a purpose every single being, not just every single person, every single being, down to the little ant has in this life, is we need to know who we are. And so we evolve over lifetimes through reincarnation. And sometimes we get it and sometimes we don't get it. And we may have thousands and thousands of lifetimes. But eventually, we all get there. It's inevitable. It's evolution. So if we want to get out of this cycle of birth and death, out of this cycle of reincarnation and suffering, because really in this life, many people would say, oh, but life is fun. We have parties and we can drink and we can play and we can gamble and we can go to Vegas and we can do all that. But the more spiritual you become, the closer to God you get, you realize that all of those things in life, whether it's marriage or kids or a new car or a promotion at work, they may give us joy, but that joy is temporary. It doesn't last. The kid grows up and moves out of the house, The husband dies or divorces you or something happens. You're not together forever, no matter what. You may have happy time for a long time, but it doesn't last. Nothing lasts in this world. Everything, especially with technology, we see this. When you get hooked on something, you always want more and more and more. It's like the new iPhone is coming out. Well, I have to upgrade. Well, now the new one's out. And you're in this cycle of it's never enough. It's never enough. It's never enough. But the one thing that does last is God, is God's love, is feeling that peace within. And there is no substitute for that. So at some point in our spiritual evolution, we get sick of the stuff. We get sick of the battle. We get sick of the, here I go again, trying to make it work, whatever. And you go, you know what? I don't need that drink. I don't need that job. I don't need that. All I want is to sit in a temple and meditate and pray and get enlightened. And when you get enlightened, and you can get enlightened right in this very lifetime, you see the world through totally different eyes. And you live in bliss. So no matter what happens to you, no matter what happens to you, the worst things in the world can happen to you. You're like, I'm fine. I'm totally fine because I know who I am. You know, things happen, things change, things, you know, circumstances all the time are going and going and going. But I'm hanging on to what is real. And what is real is God. And so I'm in that place of bliss all the time. That's the Bhagavad-Gita. That's why it's worth reading, because, you know, you can read it 100 times and you get something new from it every time, and something deeper and something more. And it is the most uplifting, fulfilling experience. I mean, I've read a lot of different spiritual books, and so many good ones. I mean, so many good ones. But what I like about the Gita is that it's like an all-in-one version. It gives you everything, and it's not even that long. Like, look, this is it, you know? And it's a poem. There's a lot of white space there. But even after I've studied it all this time, I'm still taking Bhagavad Gita classes every Friday night. And I'm taking notes in my own book of, oh yeah, there's this, there's this, there's this. So what I've done to take this to another level is I made a commentary version of Song Divine, and then I broke it up into day by day by day. Like the whole Bhagavad Gita has 700 verses. Well, my version only has about 400 verses because I left out the parts that were like exposition and other characters. I kept it to just Arjuna and Krishna, right? And I left out the parts where there's some, which is just outdated, like the caste system and stuff that we wouldn't understand, that's culturally doesn't fit with us. So it's about 400 verses. So I changed it into, for this daily Gita that I have now, 365 verses. So 365 days. So some days have 2 or 3 verses so that it all fit, right? And I made them into an email newsletter, and I'm giving it away for free. So people can go to songdivine.com and get my email newsletter for free. And it comes every single day. And then you learn the Gita a little bit each day. And by the end of the year, you've got it. So then I thought, who's going to read an email newsletter these days? Nobody even reads their email. They're all on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube. I'm going to make a video version for YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. So that's what I'm doing now. So now I started on January 1st. So today we did day 95. So we're in day 95 of 365 days. But if anybody wants to see it, it's free on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/coffee talk, or my Facebook or my Insta. And you can catch up because they bank all of them, you know, none of them go away. And I'm like, I love this stuff. I mean, I love it. I think like it's changed my life so much, and I just want it to help other people in the same way.
Beautiful.
Oh, yeah, you took the Bhagavad Gita and narrowed it down to something that is much more, I guess, much more approachable, I suppose, you know, because it can be something that's very intimidating. I've dabbled in it to say that I probably read maybe 3 pages, then I just couldn't do it. And as you were describing that, I was curious, did your Swami, does he appreciate that cultural value of this bringing into a story and really embracing the song, or is there something that they feel sacred about that shouldn't be shared in that way? It sounds like he was all on board for everything.
Yeah, he was all on board in it for everything, because there's a quote in the Gita that says, this knowledge is not for everyone, but the ones who are ready for it will find it. You know what I mean? So if people are reading it or hearing it or listening it, they're meant to.
Yeah.
It's not up to us to decide, can he handle it or not, or whatever. You know what I mean? Is he ready for it or not? It's only up to us to provide it.
Yeah.
And then people can take it or leave it, you know? So they just look for any outlet. In fact, because of the lockdown situation, we haven't been able to go to our Tuesday classes, but it's opened up a whole new world because now they have their classes live on YouTube. Other swamis are teaching Zoom classes. We can watch Vedanta societies all across the country with their Zoom classes and their YouTube classes. So now instead of just me taking every Tuesday, I've got Vedanta classes 7 days a week. I mean, literally. And I cannot get enough. I love it so much.
That's awesome, man. That sounds like a very cool community. It sounds like a really good outreach, and it makes me wonder about how much of our, ancient wisdom, spiritual wisdom is kind of trapped in this, lost in translation, mechanism, this density of, it's not interesting or it's not palatable to my culture now.
It's not current.
So current culture. So I'm not interested in it. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. That's shifting my perspective on ancient wisdom for sure.
Yeah, we've got some really cool swamis who totally get it, and they're hip and happening and with it. So one of our swamis started the Vedanta Life Academy, and he's in San Diego, and he's a young guy, American. He's Indian, but he's American born, and he grew up with Vedanta. And he's like, we need an academy, so that people can go and it's structured and, you get into it, you get out of it as much as you put into it. So he gives them homework and stuff like that. You can do it or not do it or whatever. But if you're really serious about it, you do it. And it's fabulous. And it's like edge of your seat type of things. And the hour goes by so fast. You're like, whoa, that was so good. Yeah.
Awesome.
Lots of opportunities for us.
Oh yeah. That's what I tell people when, if anybody, when people reach out to me for, that are anxious or lost or whatever, I'm like, there's so much, and they can't afford coaching or they can't afford whatever. I'm like, there's so much information out there, and there's a ton of free information. Like I offer a ton of stuff free online. You offer a ton of stuff free online. We're just two people. There's so much beautiful free information. A lot of these, the SRF, Vedanta, all these places, whatever you're drawn to, it's there for you. And it's just a matter of you putting in, really just putting in the effort. That's what it takes, because that's what we've all done. We've all put in the effort. We all had that thirst. We all went out there and did it. And that's, people that are stuck, they're obviously not in pain enough to kind of reach out, because all the help is there. All the mantras are online, all the teachings are online, there's teachers available. So thank you, Lissa, for coming on and shining your light and your enthusiasm. And it's so wonderful. It was so fun to hear where your life has been since, because I really only knew Coffee Talk and What's Your Dosha Baby. Those were the main things that I knew about you. So it's been so fun.
Surprise.
Yeah. Not surprised though. Not surprised. That's great. So I will put all the links when we post the podcast and the video and stuff of everything that you've talked about today. We'll have all the posts, and I can't wait to hear the music. So good luck with the last part of that. That's very exciting.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm going to tell everybody about it, so you won't miss it. Don't worry. I'm good at getting the word out.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. That's awesome.
Yeah, man. Well, thank you so much for your passion. I think that's been a huge takeaway for me, is just, get out of your own way and be passionate and just, go.
Just do it.
That's something I've definitely struggled with being hung up on. So you've inspired me, deeply in a lot of ways in this conversation.
Thank you. That's so good to hear. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. Well, look out for everything, Lissa. Everything that she might have come out. Keep an eye on it, and definitely dive in. I'm looking forward to it. So maybe until next time.
Until next time.
Okay, anytime.
Awesome.
Thank you,
Lissa. And we are in the Say More section with Lissa Coffey, or rather about Lissa Coffey, because this is a section where we generally go over the conversation, pull out some of the high points, and I was really enjoying the story of her life. I really loved the way she just kind of saw through any bullshit that might be in the peripherals and was just, everything is go. It is just, I can do this. I feel confident. I'm moved to do this. So I do this. And it's a very, I don't know, it seems like a lifelong process or metaphor for just being in that moment of what's in front of you to go. And then at the very end, man, I really was kind of taken aback by this whole concept of what she did with the Bhagavad-Gita, man.
And yeah, we went into at the end all because she has a passion for Vedanta and the Bhagavad-Gita. And I know maybe there's many people listening that don't know what either one of those are, or they know a little bit about it. And so she had just a beautiful explanation of that.
Yeah, it really was. It actually was kind of funny to me because I think, well, and this has been certainly my experience, is in the early stages of my searching or looking, I really put the ancient, sacred, mystical, everything on this pedestal of almost unattainable, maybe unattainable, right? It's this, well, if you're extremely lucky, you'll do enough in your life or learn enough in your life to attain that level of enlightenment. That was something that I kind of embodied for sure. And everything that was new, everything that was mystical was just really profound. And what's interesting is, and I don't know if I'm responding to this part of her epiphany of the Bhagavad Gita and how to, translate it into English, but in a way that was culturally contextual. But it really made me realize that it's the profound nature of life is really in the simplest of lessons. And we attach this story, which I did earlier, in the live section, but we attach these stories and we project this, I don't know, this bias or this perspective on a story. And I did that with the Bhagavad Gita. I was like, oh my God, first of all, it's foreign, so that's amazing. And then it's ancient, so that's even more amazing. And I don't understand it, so that means it has to be incredibly wise, And when you put all those together, it's something that I kind of just end up shutting down and feeling like, well, if this isn't palatable, if I can't digest it, how am I ever going to learn from it? So I don't try to, or I just this is just too much for me. But the way she described the Bhagavad Gita in such a concise way, but then from a whole different angle, it's like I've been stepping over a piece that could have potentially given me insight. But then again, maybe I wasn't ready for it until just now too. I don't know. Just the whole thing of it is just really, really interesting how the most subtle things can really move us in profound ways, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is that it's the truth is so simple that we miss it because we want to complicate it.
I do. I actually don't want to complicate it.
But you do.
But I do. Yeah, I don't. It's
want to.
I don't want to, but I do. Yeah, I mean.
Me too.
And it's kind of befuddling as to why,
Well, I feel for me, it's the journey of the hero's journey of arriving at the place where you left with new eyes. Right. And so that's coming full circle back to the same place you were, but with new eyes. And that's just the hero's journey, the journey of waking up. The journey of the human being is, and I think part of too is in, these times that we live in. I mean, I was thinking about this today. It's actually, there's so much stimulation coming at us all the time. Like back 100 years ago, I mean, even when I was a kid, we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have computers. And so now everything is so immediate. There's so much coming at us. We're so busy all the time with this influx. It's like there's no stillness. And the way that we find out who we really are is stillness. Yes, you can wake up in the middle of business. There are very rare cases where people wake up to the divinity that they are in the midst of life. But there's a reason why people go on retreat and go away and meditate and live in caves or, wake up after traumas or whatever. It's like when the mind kind of stops, then you experience that the stillness where it all arises from. Because if you think about creation, there has to be someplace where it comes from. Where does a thought come from? Where does creation come from? Where does it all come from? It comes from the stillness. And so when we tap into that pure potentiality, that stillness, then we can remember who we really are. But it's all the sweeter having gone into the delusion.
Yeah. And I think what maybe struck me very deeply about Arjun, is it Arjun?
Arjuna.
Arjuna. And the way she described that was, and I've had this experience where I was talking with a Jewish friend of mine, and they kind of talk about, and I believe if there's any Jewish people out there, bear with me, I'm guessing on this, but as I understand it, Israel means one who wrestles with God or something to do. There's this concept of we live life wrestling with God. Please Google that. And
I will.
And that kind of made me, that was a really interesting thing because it's a wrestling with, you're not fighting, you're wrestling. And that's a different kind of a concept. And I thought, what a beautiful way to approach, a deep spiritual story or life than literally Lord Krishna's sitting right there with you and you're wrestling the deepest, most profound questions about life with Lord Krishna right next to you. What I like there is the visual of God being right next to you, which at any point you can go into the stillness. You can pause life, even in the battle. You can take that moment to go into meditation, to ask the question, to seek guidance, to seek help from something outside of the happenings of the present moment. And it made it, I really resonated because that's how I feel much of the time. I feel that way, not totally specifically, but this life doesn't make sense to me. The things we do in life and the things we do to each other and the why we do those things, it doesn't add up to me and it doesn't make sense. So I can relate to that realization that Arjuna had of, wait a minute. Yes, I'm asked to go into battle, but I'm asked to battle and fight and kill people that I don't want to. And I'm called by the nature of the circumstances to fight things that I feel a connection to. How do I do that? How could I do that? And then just the millions of questions. And it just made me, her saying that part of that really made me feel comfortable with my own process. Because when we have a conversation and I don't get it right away, and I'm not seeing that angle, or I'm not feeling the wisdom, or I'm not being present to the moment, that's a difficult realization. Because God, how did I miss that? But at the same time, the mechanism, not in the experience, the awareness that is responding to that final understanding of, oh shit, I'm not being present. There's no identity there. So there's no shame, there's no guilt, there's no story once you realize you're not being present. And that's a strange place to be in. It's that in and out of that world. And so there's much questioning on many different layers. So I really resonated to that, the palatable nature of her kind of starting into the synopsis of that, the whole book.
Yeah, and then there's the interpretation, which I'm sure she would have gotten to had we had more time, that it's all the struggle within.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like she said, the world, it's the struggle in the world, the battle we have every day, but ultimately it's the struggle that we have within.
Yeah.
Our own demons, our self-image, our ego, our judgments, our stories.
And it's interesting because I think we touched on this in the conversation, or this could have been a conversation we had with the live section, but it's strange to be experiencing life from that state, from that present moment, because it really starts to begin to feel like you experience everything for the first time all the time. Even if it's something you've already experienced, there's a sense of, there's almost like this sense of infinite versions of things, right? So you know, even writing a letter, or if you're really present and you're focused on it, you're not comparing it to the past versions of, let's say you're having a cheeseburger. I've had a lot of cheeseburgers. I like cheeseburgers. But when you're really in the moment of that cheeseburger, this is my spiritual wisdom, kids. It comes through cheeseburgers. But when you're really in the moment of that cheeseburger, in the creation of it, I also make my own cheeseburgers, and they're phenomenal. So, and they're different every time because I just go with it, and it's totally artfully crafted because it's just the best when it's in that moment of creation. But just appreciating all of it, all of the cheeseburger, it makes it as if you've never had a cheeseburger before, because you're not thinking about the other cheeseburgers.
Exactly. Comparison is the thief of joy.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And I tell people that when they make a comment about, oh my gosh, this is the best burger I've ever had. This is the best pizza I've ever had. This is the best tea I've ever had. I'm like, you know why? Because it's the one you're having right now.
Yes. Yeah.
That's why. And this is the best conversation I've ever had because it's right now.
Yeah.
See, what we want to do is we want to compare. And especially when we go, it happens a lot to people when they come to India with me. We go to India and we go to a restaurant and, you know, the paneer isn't as good as the one they had the other day. And then, or the bed isn't as comfortable as the one they had the second day, or they're hot and the air conditioning worked better on the other bus. And it's like, because India just brings your stuff all to the surface. It magnifies everything.
Yeah.
And if you didn't have comparison, you know, I mean, on one hand, the mind needs comparison to appreciate things. But on the other hand, if you just appreciate everything without judging and quantifying, so it's like both. It's like on one hand, if you hold the candle up to the sun, it disappears. So you need that contrast. You need that comparison to really be noticed. But once you are in the moment, I guess that's a tool that we use to be mindful, is contrast. And then you appreciate it but once you're there, you realize everything is amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, there's I don't know, the unity of moments. I don't know. It's a weird state. It's a weird newness. It's also a weird realness. It's an unusual realness to the normal experience, and I find myself vacillating between, you know, these moments of profound presence and then more retracted story, you know, retracted back into a story or a thought. And, but it's the pendulum is, you know, just here. It's not going back and forth like it used to, and I'm thankful for that. And what it is what it's doing is it is showing me more of my nature, my true nature, in a lot of ways. And I'm learning a lot more about myself in that, back and forth, and it's making me not want to identify with things, or it's making me realize I can't identify with things because it's simply just what's happening now. It's just what's in front of me. It doesn't make me who I am. But there is still this nature, and there's this nature and it's a gravity, and it's, it's coming through in a lot of, some of this like homesteading that we're doing. And it's like, I went and picked up bees today. It's like, oh, what are you, a beekeeper now? I'm like, no, but I am technically keeping bees now. What I'm really doing is flying by the seat of my pants, trying to figure out what it's like, because I'm drawn to have bees because of, we need bees first off, and they're great for a garden and blah, 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 but they're also awesome, and it's an amazing culture to have. But there's just so much of my time now where it's just like, I'm realizing I'm just drawn to be in this space and grow this space. I can't really understand why, but I just know that when I'm not in this space, I don't feel right. When I am in this space, I feel right. That's it.
And that's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Is, what we talked about on Facebook Live today is that when you're not in the moment and you're in a running in a story in your head, your body's the first thing that notices, because you feel tense, anxiety.
Yeah.
You get clumsy. You drop things. You're not present, and so your body will kind of be the first little sign that you're not fully in the now.
That's really interesting. I didn't respond to that. I didn't get that when you said that earlier, but I completely resonate with that. The clumsiness, I'm not really giving myself enough time to do whatever it is I'm doing because I'm already at the next step. I'm stepping on myself. I'm out of sync with myself because I'm not living
in the present.
What is being done in that present moment. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I felt that after I stumbled over everything I was talking about. I got it, but it's funny, and I mean, that was another thing that we talked about is, like Lissa said, it's like the wisdom and knowledge isn't there for everybody, but it's available for those who are ready to find it. That's a really interesting piece of wisdom. That's
beautiful, yeah.
It's funny how that's true. You know what I mean? It's like, it's funny how that works out.
Yeah, it's so. I mean, as a teacher, there's nothing more heart expanding for me and even energizing than sitting across from a student who's really thirsty, who's getting it.
Yeah,
it's like, it's so beautiful to see people making these strides and really, going from a lot of pain to like having the light bulb come on and it just kind of all start to dissipate.
Yeah.
It's really beautiful. So that, to me, that saying speaks to that.
It does, man. And I think that it's the most work you're going to do is within yourself. And we tend to put people, teachers, gurus, literary works on a pedestal, concepts, ideas, we put them on this pedestal, and that defines our spiritual awakening. So we hold that sacred to the degree where that becomes the only mechanism to experience that spiritual awakening. And in that moment, we're retracting back, because it's not, maybe this is my realization in the moment, but it's not, it's truly that the guru is pointing at the light. So when you find something that points at truth, points at light, points at a direction to go, it is just pointing at the awareness. It is just creating a space for you to be aware. But that awareness, that is the greatest teacher. And when you hold that inside, when you put that when you value that and you put that on your priority list to be in that awareness, shines a lot of light on you.
That's when the magic, and that's when life starts to be really fun and the magic starts to happen.
Yeah.
That's when life becomes less arduous and more joyful.
Yeah.
When you shine the light and you prioritize the present moment in your spiritual practices and your understanding.
Yeah. That's
when the fun begins.
Oh, is it fun? Oh, is it fun? It is, man. It's a trip. I enjoy it. And, this was yet another unique angle into the perspective of spiritual awakenedness, into the spiritual seeking process. And I loved her angle. I liked that she was very open to share all that. And, she's just a powerhouse of knowing who she is and going for it, man. I love it.
Yeah, great conversation. Thank you, honey. Love you.
Love you too. Have a great night.